have an innate connection to this game. It's in our DNA. I mean, it truly is. When you see a young native kid pick up a stick for the first time, and after they come out of our 2-day camp, you would think that they were born with that stick in their hand. There's just a connection to this game.
I think respect is a huge one because it's about when you are playing the game, respecting yourself, respecting others, respecting your opponent, and respecting your ancestors who, you know, this game went underground. You know, this game was taken from us, and just recognizing and respecting, you know, what it's taken for it to come back.
Dakotas were really big on family. I mean, pretty much any culture is, but like, I remember before a lot of the games and stuff, and especially in a creator's game, which is supposed to be like a healing game for our people, they always tell you to play for like, you know, people who have passed on, and like people like who are no longer able-bodied. It might be your elders, people who like got in accidents, you know, or people who are just born with disabilities. But like, they always make sure to stress to play for people who aren't here, people who can't, and to always be thankful for your ability to play and just life in general.
To me, the biggest one would be respect and honor, and yeah, I think those are the bigger two for me.
I think family is huge too, like, you know, family and connection to community. In the Twin Cities, I've really seen the game bring people together and actually create like a tiwahe, right? Like our extended family where that didn't exist before. And, you know, there's not many activities that are cultural, physical, sober, that bring together people across generations.
Following the Dakota Removal Act, this is one of the social activities that never followed us into exile. We lost this game. One of the last recorded games took place in 1858 between two bands of Dakotas that played. 4 years later, we're exiled out of Minnesota, and this game does not follow us into exile.
So going back to like the traditional game of lacrosse, they used to play on fields that were miles long, miles wide, and games would last like days to even weeks.
And we also used the game, you know, a lot of times to settle disputes. So if that was territorial, rather than actually having direct conflict, you would use Creator's Game to resolve those things. I think from a feminine standpoint as well, looking at how, you know, I've been able to find some things if you go back to that look at how the women would use it as a social opportunity as well. So a lot of times you'd bring forward whatever your nation had a bounty of. So at the end of the seasons too, you'd bring all of that and you'd play the game. And it kind of embedded this like kind of fun but also rivalry. And you'd play the game, and whoever won the game got to take all of the bounty.
Even during the war, people would go play lacrosse and play the Creator's Game. And like, it just kind of goes to show like how like, even though people are like fighting, you know, they can still put their differences aside for like that. Such a sacred place, and then just to be able to play a game like that, like, there would be like, you know, like different people from different tribes, and, you know, so they'd all be playing on different teams with each other, against each other, you know. So like, I don't know, it's been a big part of our history, and they always, you know, they call it our game, but it's everybody's game.
Every nation has its own form of the game. And so in this region, not only for the Dakota, but all of the Western Great Lakes nations, so you have the, you know, various Anishinaabe tribes, Dakota, Menominee, Ho-Chunk. We all play with what's called the Western Great Lakes style stick. So that is the stick with the round head. It's a smaller pocket. And what's cool about that too is that meant that we could play against and with other nations. And for us, the game was really much more than a game. There's ceremonial pieces that are involved. There's this component around having it be a healing game, so playing for those who are sick or struggling in need of prayers. A lot of times you would see that ball, actually, there would be prayers that would go into that. And there would be a very specific person who had the role of actually just sewing, making that ball, and putting all of that energy and prayer into it. And you played the game, and it didn't matter anything in terms of the outcome. It was all about the thoughts that people had on that field and the energy that went into it. And then at the end, the person who we were playing for, that person, maybe they were struggling with illness or something was going on where they needed those prayers, you would give them that ball.
The one all-important event of the occasion was the lacrosse game, for which it had been customary to select those two bands which could boast the greater number of fast runners. A meeting was held to appoint some medicine man to make the balls that were to be used in the lacrosse contest.
The story that I shared with you about Charles Eastman, Ohiasa, that game was played to initiate a name for a young man. When you read that recording, there's several things that jump out at me. The making of those balls were done by medicine men. And the lobbying, because he speaks of the lobbying that it took place to select that one individual to make those balls.
Right.
Those were done in ceremony. That medicine man made those balls in ceremony. The honor that's bestowed on that individual to have that right to do that is recorded and captured quite well in his writings.
Yeah.
But one of the end results is this young Dakota man being called into the center and given that name. Our naming ceremonies still continue today.
For us as Dakota women, there are certain nations where the women don't play. And that isn't because of sexism. I think if you look at it through a Eurocentric lens, sometimes we're like, oh, women didn't play, because there wasn't a value. And that's not what it is. For those nations, there's very specific reasons, and I can't speak to those because that isn't my own nation. But a lot of times that actually has to do with the power of women, and that they didn't go into certain realms in terms of culture and in terms of practices, out of respect, and respect for the men too, because of the power that they carry. But for us as Dakota women, we do have documentation and stories about us playing the game, playing both double ball and also creator's game. And it's been really beautiful to see our women kind of become reintroduced and involved in that again. And I think it's also really up to people as individuals and nations to decide if, for them as women, if that's something they want to do.
One of the powerful things about this traditional game, as it relates to Dakota and Ojibwe people, is that we had a female version of this game too. Dakota women played this, Ojibwe women played this game. Now out east, where you get, the Haudenosaunee and things like that, women are forbidden to play their wood stick game. And so think of the social advancement that we were at that time. And we played mixed. You had women and men playing together too. We've got recordings of those. And so I see the socialness that it brings today. I can only imagine the socialness that it brought to communities back in the day.
I love the game. I think that it's not only an outlet for me to be physically active and connect with other Indigenous people here in the Twin Cities, but it's also an outlet for me just to build community in a healthy way.
It's something that we got to keep alive because it's been within our culture for forever. It's like one of the first documented things that we have is Lacrosse.
Yeah, I think getting more Native Americans exposed to this game and helping out with scholarships for college and everything, it's a really big opportunity for that. That's what I want to see.
On the team aspect, like I said, we had kids from all over South Dakota that would come play with us, and a lot of them kids, like I got to know a lot of them kids really well through lacrosse.